Welcome to Behavioral Psychology. Today, we will explore a fascinating psychological phenomenon, the psychological reactance. Have you ever wondered why when something is forbidden, we are even more compelled to do the opposite? In this video, we will dive into the mechanics of this psychological effect, how it influences our behavior, and how to understand and use this effect effectively. Get ready to uncover the mysteries of human behavior. The psychological reactance effect: the more you prohibit, the more you want. Have you ever wondered why people are strangely drawn to forbidden things? A censored movie, a blocked website, or a door marked with "Do not open" all seem to make us want to do the opposite. It's not just curiosity. This is a psychological effect called psychological reactance. This effect describes the psychological response when people feel their freedom of choice is threatened, leading to a strong urge to regain that freedom. In psychology, reactance is a natural defense mechanism. When someone, or a system, tries to control our behavior through orders, prohibitions, or restrictions, our innate desire for freedom reacts. It doesn't just make us want to resist, but also idealize the prohibited behavior or object, making it seem more appealing. A familiar example: when parents forbid their children from playing video games too much. Instead of making the game less attractive, it turns into a hidden treasure that they desperately try to access. Reactance isn't just present in personal relationships, it appears at every societal level. In politics, when a government attempts to censor the press, the result can be stronger underground information dissemination, and more dangerously, through social media, word of mouth, or encrypted platforms. In popular culture, a movie banned in a country can become an underground phenomenon, attracting millions of secret views online simply because it is forbidden. One of the most prominent studies on psychological reactance comes from psychologist Jack Brem, who laid the groundwork for the concept. In a famous experiment, he asked a group of students to rate the attractiveness of some items. He then divided the students into two groups. One was allowed to freely choose which item to keep, while the other was restricted and forced to pick from a limited list. The results were surprising. The restricted group tended to rate the item they couldn't choose as more attractive. An item that seemed trivial became special simply because it was denied. Since then, other researchers have expanded on this theory. In a 2004 study published in the Journal of Consumer Research, it was found that consumers tend to prefer products labeled as limited edition, censored, or almost sold out, not because of quality, but because of the feeling of lost choice. In fact, many modern marketing campaigns intentionally exploit this. "Only 3 left. Sold out nationwide. Banned in Europe." These slogans don't deter consumers, but instead stimulate their desire to buy. Interestingly, psychological reactance is not only found in Western cultures that value individualism but also exists in Eastern societies that emphasize collectivism. However, the expression may vary. In Japan, where harmony and discipline are highly valued, people may not react with overt public outbursts, but instead exhibit subtle forms of reactance, through procrastination, silence, or resistance in private settings. In countries like South Korea or Vietnam, this effect may manifest more strongly among young people, those sensitive to boundaries and eager to assert themselves. The question arises: if psychological reactance is so strong, how can we regulate social behavior without triggering backlash? Experts suggest a strategy: behavioral design. Instead of prohibiting, we can guide. Instead of restricting, we can offer choices. For example, instead of outright banning students from using phones, schools can create silent zones where reading or sports activities are encouraged. Instead of forbidding salty foods to combat heart disease, we can highlight the benefits of each food and allow people to make their own choices. Behavioral design doesn't impose, it suggests. It triggers, and it maintains a sense of autonomy. People don't dislike rules, but we hate the feeling of having our freedom of choice taken away. When we feel coerced, restricted, or controlled, our instinct for freedom rises, not because we want to rebel, but because we need to be in control of ourselves. Understanding psychological reactance not only helps us design societies more effectively but also teaches us how to engage in dialogue, not through power, but through respecting people's freedom. How to overcome psychological reactance. Understanding the psychological reactance effect is one thing, But not being controlled by your own reaction is another challenge. Many of us, when faced with external limitations or controls, quickly respond with anger, impulsivity, or defiance. But there's a truth you need to remember. Feeling deprived of freedom doesn't mean you are actually being controlled, and it's not always necessary to react in opposition. Pause and identify your reactance feelings. When someone forbids you from doing something, like, no sweets anymore, don't talk in the meeting, or, don't post that on social media, do you feel annoyed? Do you feel insulted or deprived of your rights? The first step in this situation is to pause and recognize the emerging feelings of resistance. Ask yourself, am I reacting because of the prohibition, or because this really matters to me? Do I feel like I'm being controlled? Where is this feeling coming from? From my self-esteem, fear of losing control, or just instinctive rebellion? By naming the feeling, such as angry at being controlled, or rebellious due to loss of choice, you begin to regain control over your emotions. When you can see the reactance effect in yourself, you start to diffuse it. Separate, free choice from reasonable behavior. Imagine you're on a diet, and your doctor recommends cutting out sugar completely. Suddenly, you crave sweets more than ever. This is psychological reactance in action. But if you stop and think, am I avoiding sugar because the doctor told me to? Or because I want to live a healthier life? You'll see that the choice is not a coercion, but an act of self-control. Practice this daily by asking yourself, if no one told me to do this, would I still choose to do it? If the answer is yes, then you're acting from maturity, not reaction. Try role reversal and see things from the other side. One effective way to ease reactance is to shift your perspective. Put yourself in the shoes of the one making the request. Ask yourself, why does the other person want me to stop? Are they doing this out of goodwill? Is it beneficial to me? For example, when your parents forbid you to stay up late, instead of thinking, they don't understand me, try to think, are they concerned about my health? Have they ever struggled with sleeplessness? This shift in perspective helps reduce the internal, triggering threshold. Many studies show that empathy and understanding the motives of others help lower psychological reactance. When you realize the other person is not controlling you, but partnering with you, you'll be less likely to resist. Create the illusion of choice for yourself. One reason prohibitions cause a strong reaction is that they remove the feeling of choice. So, you can recreate the sense of freedom for yourself. Instead of saying, I'm forbidden to watch TV, try saying, I choose not to watch TV tonight to spend time reading. I choose to follow this rule because it aligns with my goals. The key is to make compliance feel like a proactive decision. Therapeutic techniques like acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, or motivational interviewing use this method to help patients manage addiction, control behavior, and regain a sense of ownership. Distinguish being restricted from being guided. Not every rule is a prison. Some limits are there not to block you, but to protect you from yourself. For example, traffic laws are not to control you but to protect your life. Social media time limits can help you sleep better. The no smoking rule in cafes helps you breathe cleaner air. By understanding this, you learn to choose healthy boundaries and respect reasonable limits imposed by others. Practice mindfulness to observe, not react. Psychological reactance often comes with impulsiveness. You hear someone forbidding you, and you immediately want to oppose it, as a reflex. To overcome this, you need to practice observing your reactions without acting impulsively. Mindfulness is an effective tool. When meditating, you learn to acknowledge your thoughts. I feel controlled. I'm feeling frustrated. I want to react. But you don't get caught up in action. You just observe. Gradually, you build a space between feeling coerced and acting in resistance. And in that space, you find true freedom. Psychological reactance is an inseparable part of human nature. But whether you are controlled by it or not, that is a choice. When you recognize, understand, and transform your resistant emotions into purposeful actions, you not only become truly free, but also emotionally intelligent. Not every prohibition is wrong, and you don't always have to oppose it. Sometimes, the greatest freedom is when you learn to choose self-restraint, mindfully. Not because you are forced to. Thanks for watching until the end. If you found today's content valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any deep dive psychological insights in future videos. See you in the next episode of Behavioral Psychology, where we uncover how the human mind works, logically and emotionally.